As a gang member, I grew up with a lot of gang activity. You know, back then it was more, you will give me respect before I give respect. In those eras, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, part of the 80s and the 90s. I was still involved. I just seen it, the respect has gone down, you know. There's really no respect. And I personally think it starts at the home, you know. If you don't teach your child respect, then how can they go out and give respect, you know?
Welcome to the My SGV podcast. Our mission is to capture and share the stories of the people of the San Gabriel Valley. We believe our diversity is what makes the SGV great. And no matter where you're from in the San Gabriel Valley, you will feel welcome.
All right, SGVers, welcome back to another episode of the My SGV podcast. Thank you for tuning in and spending this time with us. If you're new here, we bring you the stories of the people of the San Gabriel Valley. And if you are a returning listener, welcome, and we hope to bring you another exciting episode here today. Well, Scott, we were talking about the tie-in to today's guest, and when I first spoke with him, I mentioned this event from my high school that he knew about. And I think I've shared this story with you before.
Yeah, you have, and I think on the podcast as well.
Well, for the new listeners, and maybe I should share it again. I went to Marquette High School. I graduated in 96. And in 1992, I remember I probably weighed 140 pounds I think I was 12 years old. I was a freshman walking the halls, and I would stick to one side of the hallway and look down, not to make eye contact because there were so many scary people out there at the time. And I remember there was a period of 2 weeks where every single day there was a fight. There was a fight every day, and it was between Asian and Mexican gang members. And I was like, wow, I guess this is just normal, but it was still kind of frightening. So Marquette High School, when you walk out to the lunch court, there's, I think, several different doors that lead out there. And I remember walking out to the lunch court, opened the doors, and nobody was eating lunch. Everybody was just standing, and they were all Asians on one side and all the Mexicans on the other side. And I opened the door, and I just looked. I was like, wow, what is going on? So immediately I just walked over to the Asian side, and they just stood there looking at each other the whole lunch period. And this happened for 3 days. And they were putting up cameras on the bungalows. They're bringing in more, security. And the head basketball coach at the time, Mike Burke, he said, if you fight, he was also a part of the security. He said, if you get caught fighting, you'll never play basketball here. So one day, a fight breaks out, or the third day, a fight breaks out. Immediately, there's security that rushes over, stops it, and I believe it was a watching member, and they're walking him to the office. And on the way to the office, he says something to his friend, and his friend comes over. And then the guy who they were walking was probably like over 6 foot. His friend comes over. He grabs his friend by the shirt, throws him against the security, and the whole place erupted in fighting everywhere. And I don't remember much because I had to get out of there. But I remember hearing the sound of a guy that I knew, his head hit the concrete. And I won't ever forget that because it was such a horrible, horrible sound. And I couldn't do anything, and I just left. But that was the event that I had mentioned to our guest, and he actually heard about it from a different perspective. And we're going to get into our guest and how he knew about that incident. But before that, I just want to give a thanks to Paris Baguette. As always, they provide the delicious refreshments and the treats here for us and our guests. If you haven't already, go check them out in San Gabriel, Paris Baguette. Well, yeah, I have shared that with you before.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a scary story.
Yeah. I think it led to the expulsion of over maybe 190 kids is what I think. Yeah, and so the high school was different after that, but yeah.
Wow.
Well, that people are probably wondering, what the heck does that have to do with our guest? Well, again, he heard of this incident. I'm just sharing that with you, the audience. But I want to get to introducing our guest. His name is Popeye Ray Corona. He's a professional boxing referee, and he's also the host of Third Man in the Ring. Ray, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, there's many things tied in there, but yeah, professional boxing referee, right?
Yes,
That's what you do.
And a little bit of MMA as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
As soon as you said that, and I went to look you up, I was like, okay, I've seen you.
Yeah.
I've seen you before.
How have you seen him at You
watching
go,
some fights.
You go to the fights?
No,
or-
on TV.
Oh, is that right? So
Yes.
Popeye, is that how you like to be called, or Ray?
You can call me Ray, Popeye Ray, whichever you feel
Oh, okay.
comfortable with.
So you travel around to...
Yes, I've been blessed. I've been all over the world doing fights, but my home state is California.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you're licensed to do both MMA and
Yes.
boxing.
Yes.
A separate license for each, or
Same license by the state of California, and I belong to the organization WBC, the World Boxing Council.
okay.
Yeah, they're the ones that have sent me to parts of the world to do fights.
And so, do you do more of one type than the other?
Boxing, I'd say I got 42 MMA fights and 800 and I think it's 90 boxing matches.
Wow.
Yeah.
Over what period of time?
Since 1998, I've been a referee
Really?
since 19. Minus 1 year, I was suspended 1 year.
Oh, yeah?
By my own not thinking right,
Oh,
But I'll tell you a story about that after. But,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's 25 years, and you've done,
Yeah.
well, close to 1,000. That's like one a
Yeah.
week.
Yes, California has the most boxing and MMA shows in the world.
Really?
In the world, yes.
Where do they hold them?
They have them pretty much all over California, Southern California mostly, but like this Saturday, we have it at the YouTube right next to the Staples. Or is it called Staples? They keep changing names. It's the
Crypto.com
yes,
or something
Crypto.
like.
And YouTube Theater is right below it. So we have a fight there. And then next week is at Fantasy Springs Casino in Palm Springs.
Really?
Yeah. But they have shows all over. Again, California has the most shows, so even more than Las Vegas. Las Vegas is the mega capital. Pretty much they have mega fights. Where they have, like, I'm just throwing a number out there, 30 mega fights a year, we'll have 15 mega fights. Mm-hmm. You can't beat the casinos in Vegas, so. But yeah, we still have more shows though.
Mm-hmm. And do you prefer one to the other?
Oh, boxing. I love boxing. To me, boxing is a gentleman's sport. MMA, the athletes are still top athletes. It's just, in my opinion, it's more of the young crowd, real young, 15 to 25 years old. They just love the MMA because it looks easier to them. And this is what I'm hearing from 25-year-olds. It looks easier because if you can't do it from the top, you can do it from the bottom or wrestle or jiu-jitsu and boxing, dirty boxing. And boxing is more of a gentleman's sport. It's from way back, from as long as I can remember,
Mm-hmm.
The Muhammad Ali's, the Joe Frazier's to Mike Tyson now,
So which is more popular?
They're both. One of my sponsors on my podcast, Ringside Boxing, he just told me just this past week, he looked into it. Boxing still has more pay-per-view views, but MMA is still it's right there. They're neck and neck, Yeah.
MMA, they're in cages, right?
Yes, cages. Or if they do it in a boxing ring, it's 5 ropes instead of 4. So that's the difference. When you see a boxing ring with 5 ropes, there's going to be MMA as well.
Mm.
Wow, fascinating stuff, right? Well, Ray, the show is called the My SGV Podcast. What is your connection to the San Gabriel Valley?
Well, I grew up here. This is my roots. When I come here, is that the word nostalgia? I just feel at home, And I grew up in mostly Bassett. That's where I grew up. But prior to that, as a little boy, I had a short time in El Monte, Baldwin Park, and then we moved to Bassett. Yeah.
And what was life like for you growing up in those areas?
I didn't have a good childhood. But still the good times were in El Monte. I remember as a little boy, and this is where times have changed. It's sad, but I can remember in kindergarten as 5, 6, 7 years old, there'd be 10 of us walking from Maxon Boulevard in El Monte to El Monte High School during the summer. There'd be 10 of us, 10, 11 of us, barefooted, walking to the El Monte swimming pool, and nobody bothered us. We'd had a quarter from our parents, and that's what it would cost to get into the El Monte swimming pool, and we all walked, swam for 3-4 hours, and walked all back. Those are good times.
What would be the difference today?
Unfortunately, I have my grandson, Jesse. I wouldn't even let him out of my sight now. So that's the ugly part of life nowadays with all the child trafficking and all that. It's just scary times, scary times.
Ray, you mentioned that you didn't have a I think you said good childhood.
No, it was real bad. Foster homes to, I don't know if you guys remember McLaren Hall.
No.
It was the juvenile detention center.
It wasn't really juvenile. It was where kids that were in trouble instead of going to juvenile hall, they were sent there. It was like, I used to see it more as not necessarily a foster home, but you stood there until you could find a foster home. But it was a lot of troubled kids, and I was in McLaren Hall for 2 weeks, and nobody touched me or nothing like that, but it was very traumatizing to me. I've never forgotten. I was just a baby, practically like maybe first grade,
You just had no family.
No, my mom was very abusive, and I guess you could relate. Back in the 60s, 70s, you can spank your kid in the street, and nobody give it a second thought. It was known, and my mom was very abusive, and she had, I guess, went overboard, beat me, and not to exaggerate, but to say that's how bad she beat me, that in those days you could still hit your kid and nothing would happen. The cops got involved. I went to La Primaria Elementary School in El Monte.
Who made the complaint?
I don't know. I think the teacher just noticed my face. I just remember going to the office and the cops came, and my mom came, and it was very traumatizing because I still wanted to go with my mom, but as they took me, I remember my mom's words were, "You say that again, I'll do it again." And I cried and cried, and they took me to a foster home, and I ran away right away, and that's where I ended up in McLaren Hall.
Well, that's heartbreaking. And
it was rough.
Did that end your relationship with your mother?
No. I eventually went back with her, but she was just very abusive, very promiscuous. A little boy shouldn't see his mom doing that with men. For whatever reason, she would leave the door open, and mind you, there was me and my 3 siblings, my older sisters, so they even got it worse.
Oh, that's horrible.
So I don't know why she did that, but
is your mother still alive?
No, she went home. She's I would like to jump ahead. I had I didn't have a relationship with her, and then I became a Christian 14 years ago. And in that time, my wife would always say, "Hey, you need to go see your mom, and you're a Christian now. You need to forgive her." And just when she was on her deathbed, I finally went to go see her, and as God is my witness, man, she just whispered out to me, and she's a very prideful woman. She whispered out to me in front of my wife and my 2 sons. She said, "You know what, Emil, I'm sorry I was a bad mother." And it's I guess it felt like just a load off my chest, and it broke my heart. And I just said, "You know what, Mom, I love you, and I'm sorry for being a bad son," because believe me, I was running amok out there after, so I wasn't a good boy, to her, but she apologized, and I really think that was just conviction, and I forgive her. So she made peace with me, and I made peace with her before she went home.
Wow, that is a really nice thing to hear.
Yeah.
What a powerful moment that must have been for you.
It was because again, even as a Christian, I didn't want to forgive her. Well, I knew I had to, but I'd rather not deal with it. And I just, she's dying. She was 92 when she passed, pretty much starving to death. All her organs shut down, and I just didn't want to go see her. But my wife said, "Hey, you need to show an example to your grandkids, your children." So I went. So when I went, it just caught me out of left field. I didn't go with an attitude. Don't get me wrong. I went there to, say my goodbyes, but I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that because through all the years, she never would apologize to us. When she'd beat us or beat my sisters, she said, "Hey, I'm your mother. I don't need to apologize to you." So that's
Your father was absent?
Yes, my father was absent. I used to play around. I say, "Hey, considering she was married to my mom, I could see why, But, that's another story I would always tease.
Did you meet your father?
Yes, I know him. He lives in Mexico. I've met him over the years numerous times. He's never been involved, but he's well off over there, and he's always financially supporting me. And I don't hold nothing against him, you know. But
wow. So you've come from from a point of forgiveness of a lot of people.
Yes. And I contribute that to my walk as a Christian. I'm not perfect. I still have my struggles, but the more and more I get into my devotion, the more and more I get into my reading my Bible, I see I got to get right before I could ask somebody else to get right or witness to them,
What is your favorite part of the Bible?
Psalms and Proverbs. It really gets you through those tough times. It really gets you through, I notice nowadays there's a lot of depression in a lot of people. I don't know if that's just from the things we're eating. I can't say, but the troubled times that are happening in the United States, in the world. I mean, when you read the book of Proverbs, read the book of Psalms, there's a lot of verses in there that just jump out at you and just say, you know what? Keep your eyes on God and it's going to be all right. And again, I have my bad days, I have my bad days where I doubt. My faith is hard, But all in all, I don't worry about yesterday or tomorrow. I try to get through today,
How do you treat people?
I try to treat them with respect. Now, as a gang member, I grew up with a lot of gang activity. Back then it was more, you will give me respect before I give respect. But still in those eras, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, part of the 80s and the 90s. I was still involved. I just seen it. The respect has gone down, There's really no respect. And I personally think it starts at the home, If you don't teach your child respect, then how can they go out and give respect, My biggest pet peeve in life is cussing. I just don't see why there's any reason for cussing unless you're angry or you slam your finger on the door. But the F word is just thrown around in front of women. And
it's everywhere.
I see kids in the market just effing this, effing that. There's no respect for women. And I just don't see, I don't know what's, and like it says in the Bible, it's only going to get worse, But again, we got to have hope and keep spreading the word. At least with me, that's the way I feel. Yeah.
Ray, you sort of moved ahead in the journey, and I understand why with your mom. But if we can go back, you were growing up. You were in this facility. I forgot what it was called.
McLaren Hall.
Yeah. And where did your life go from there?
Just a lot of trouble. My mom and her sisters, we all moved in together, and that's when we moved to Bassett. And I had cousins. And I call them brothers because we grew up in the same house. We're from the same gang. And it was just constant in and out of juvenile hall, youth authority, prison. And same with my brothers. I have an older brother, Peter, doing great now. He's got a great job, but he did 35 years straight.
35 years in prison?
Straight, 35 years straight. But as he's a Christian now too, but it's a trip. If you were to talk to him today, you wouldn't think he spent a day in jail. His whole demeanor, his heart, he's done with that life, And mind you, the last 12 of those years was in the notorious Pelican Bay.
Oh, my.
And that in itself, 12 years there, to sit in a cell 23 hours a day, I can't even imagine.
It's all solitary there.
Yes.
Did you ever visit?
They didn't allow me to visit because I'm an ex-felon. At the time, he's been out 4 years now, but I tried to visit like in the 90s, and they didn't allow me. I drove all the way up there to Crescent City, and they said, no, you're not allowed to come in.
You mentioned gangs. When did you get involved with that?
I got jumped into Bassett Grande, when I was 12 years old.
12 years old?
Yes. Mind you, my brothers were already in the gang, so it was just a natural thing, It just... My mom actually bought me my first pair of khakis, and she thought it was cute. Little did she know where it was going to take me, And this is where if I could give any advice to parents, new fathers, kids, I have 7 children. Thank you, Jesus. All of them have turned out good, One's a police officer, my oldest LAPD. I have 2 in the military. 1 in the military, I'm sorry. And the other ones all have great jobs, good families, and my youngest son's a professional fighter, Anyways, I know now that they're all adults. They won't do so much as you say. They'll do as you do. And you know what? We can talk a big game. Don't do this. Don't do that. But if we're doing it ourselves, don't be surprised when they do it. You know. And I've learned the bad that I've done. I've seen some of my sons do that, and I'm like, man, I try to school my sons now with their children. You know, lead by example. Lead by example.
If you do something wrong, is it okay to say to them, I did this wrong. Don't do what I did.
Totally.
So you're still doing something wrong, but are your words stronger than your actions there?
Well, I mean, in that instant, it's like my grandson. I'm always talking to him. I tell him how I wasted my young childhood going to jail. But at the same time, with my own children, I always wanted them to be better than me. But yet, when they'd see me get in a fight in the street, and then as they turned into teenagers, I always encouraged them not to be fighting. They were all boxers. So I always encouraged them, don't be fighting in the street. But when I find out they got in fights in the street, I would like, my wife would tell me, because they see you doing it. And it hit me, you know, and you're right. And this goes back to, I told you I was suspended out of the 25 years as a referee. I was suspended 1 year for a fight. I got in a fist fight. And and then my son, the youngest one, the boxer, ends up getting in a fist fight weeks later in the street. And I'm like, as much as I'm telling them don't do this, and then they see me do it, you know what I mean? So yeah, if I could give any advice to a new father, you know, lead by example, because we can talk a big game, but if we're speeding in the streets, going 100 miles an hour, going through red lights and telling our kids don't do it, come on, they're going to do it because they see dad doing it, you know?
Yeah. Can you share with the audience why, like I shared that story about my high school, but like, why is that relevant? Because I forget how the conversation went, but we were talking over Zoom and I said that and you're like, oh, I heard of that incident.
Yes.
So just tell us about that.
I was still involved in the gangs at that time. And I'll just put it at this. At that time, the political organized crime at that time, I don't want to say the name, and I'm sure people connect the dots, mentioned, hey, the guys from San Gabriel are having issues with the Asian gangs. How are we going to deal with it? And it was almost called to like, they call it a green light. The Mexicans call it a green light. Are we going to put a green light on the Asians? And I remember one of these top organized crime guys told me, you know what, we have to really look into that because the Asians are no joke. They are very organized. They are organized and backed up by their parents, if not the organized crime families, you know. So they pretty much gave advice to the San Gabriel gangs, handle it, try to quiet it, because that can only turn into a major storm. And we all know from the underworld, they don't want eruptions because the eruptions will cause more heat from the police, the FBI, and those top organizations don't like that. And they control the Southern Mexicans. So I remember specifically watching the news and remembering those riots at that school. And I had a nephew, Mike, at the time that was going to that school. But yeah, that really brought up, and I had talked to Johnny Chang about that incident too.
Did he know about that incident?
Yes, he knew. And he was a gang member. He was from the Huachins, no?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And hopefully he'll be coming on your podcast. I really put in a good word for you. So
yeah, I hope so
willing,
too.
God willing, he'll come on. He'd be a great guest, man. But yeah, that was the story. I knew right away when you had mentioned that. I remembered it specifically. You know?
Yeah.
But thank God, nothing came really that I know of after the riot. You know.
Yeah.
I had always thought or had always heard that like gangs don't mix with like other gangs, you know, outside of their own territory, or let's say Asians wouldn't mix with Mexicans, but it sounds like that is the problem. They do fight each other.
Yes. Well, it's like any, you know, just like the movies, you know. I mean, the best movie I could tell you to watch that can describe the Mexicans is American Me. As far as I'm concerned, that was to the letter. Everything in there that's the way. One day you could be part of the fellas, the next day your name is on the list. You know, it's not guaranteed. And that's how the devil works, you know. The devil works even through crime, you know. It's one day you're part of the guys, the next day you're not. But as far as crime, we usually do it to our own kind. The Mexicans are on the Mexicans, the Asians are on the Asians, the African Americans are on the African Americans, and the whites on the whites, But as far as mixing, we have to, in jail, you're going to see each other. So there's got to be a mutual respect, And it's never been a secret. The Asians are very well backed by the Asian organizations. So that was something that they didn't want that to explode into something worse, because then it would obviously mess up their criminal activity, Same with the Asians, I'm sure. If you're fighting other crime, if you're fighting other gangs, then you can't continue your own stuff,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I say that partially because living in New York, I was always told, look, the Italian mobsters will never even look at you. They don't care.
Yeah.
They're just dealing with each other, right?
Yes.
And I was just wondering how much of that is true.
It's totally true. It's totally true. But if you cross the line into their world, well, they'll deal with you,
Right. But if you walk their neighborhood, we were always told, hey, the Italian mobster neighborhoods are the safest in the city.
Yes.
Because they patrol they're not going to mess.
Right.
They could care less about you, but they're going to keep their neighborhoods
safe.
Safe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, maybe in the 70s it was like that. That's why, as a child, I could walk to El Monte High School with 10 little boys. We were all 6, 7 years old, and nobody bothered us.
But do you think there's more gang activity today than there was then?
Yeah. I think my days were tougher. These days are crazier. There's no rules. There's no.
How well behaved are boxers and MMA competitors?
On the street, they're most of the time I run into them. They're gentlemen. There's an old saying: if they know they could do it, they don't need to show it.
And so you're in the ring with them. You think they're pretty honorable.
Most of them, yes. Most of them are very honorable. They conduct themselves very well. They're very respectful with each other, though. And like at a weigh-in, they can get a little mouthy, and sometimes it's show, but sometimes they take it a little too extreme and they get in fisticuffs, but it's part of the show,
As a referee, at what point do you get involved? You're not part of the weigh-in, are you?
No, but we're encouraged to go to the weigh-in to see if the fighter's in shape. If you see if he's dehydrated, that brings a whole nother element to the fight. A dehydrated fighter is he's in danger of getting hurt, Through the years, we found out through the doctors, a dehydrated fighter, our brains sit in jelly. So when you're dehydrated, there's no jelly in it's not sitting in nothing.
So it's exposed?
It's exposed. So when you get into the ring the next day, you're trying to hydrate, and it takes up to 72 hours to hydrate. And these fighters are getting in the ring literally 24 hours later, and some of them are damaged already. So when they get hit, your brain's like a marble in a jar. If there's no jelly in there to soften the blow, it's going to hit the skull, and that's how you get knocked out. So, but California, Andy Foster, the executive officer of California, he's really hard on dehydrating. If you come in there's a percentage there, I don't exactly know it, but if you come in too hydrated, too low in your weight, he won't let you fight. I don't care if it's a world title fight. I don't care how many millions of dollars that are involved. He will not allow you to fight. He's very strict,
There's only one referee in the ring, right?
Yes.
But there are judges.
3 judges that score the fight. Same with MMA, 3 judges that score the MMA fight. But we hold the third man in the ring, my podcast, the third man in the ring in the fight. We hold the cards. We can stop a fight too early and get
so
booed.
you're in control, not the judges. You're the captain of the ship.
The only one that can overrule us is a doctor in California.
Oh.
But we control the action. We control, in my opinion, the best referee is a referee that you don't see. If you tell me, hey, I didn't even know you refereed that fight, that's the best compliment you could have gave me,
Have you ever been in dicey situations?
No. I mean, again, I've been blessed. I've had a pretty good career so far. Nothing outrageous or thank you, Jesus, nobody's been killed in my fights. Couple serious injuries, but nobody's lost their life, I thank God for that. I would like to think I have the experience. I always look at two fighters as growing up. When I grew up, we were encouraged to fist fight each other growing up, kids in the street. And when you have a bunch of friends and two are constantly arguing, you always have friends that are constantly arguing, constantly bickering. You know what? Fight and get it over with. You like them both, and hey, that's enough. He's had enough. You proved your point. And that's the way I get in the ring. I try to look at both fighters as my friends. I don't hate either one of you. I like you both. And when one proves their point, I'll stop the fight. And so far, it's worked for me, And prayer. Before I get in, God, give me the wisdom to stop it at the right time. And they both walk out.
Ray, I want to understand, how did you get into refereeing?
I've been around the boxing all my life. My brothers were boxers. I'm going to be honest, I was a wannabe boxer. I was always a chubby kid. I couldn't get my weight down. So as much as I sparred, I just could not get my weight down. I wasn't disciplined. And then going in and out of jail, juvenile hall, I could never get back on track always, So eventually I got too old. I was sparring. That wasn't going as good as I would want it to go, My trainer, Ben Lira, out of South El Monte right here, nicknamed me toward the end of my wannabe boxing career, the Piñata. So that tells me, that tells you a lot. That's not a good name, man. Canvasback Corona. So, you know what I mean? So a lot of that stuff, hey, it's time to quit, And I just told Ben, I would really like to be a referee. I like to try refereeing. So I tried it for the amateurs for 9 years. 9 years, and they never let me get in the ring. I sat on the side for 9 years.
Wow.
And God had a plan, though, for the simple fact. I sat there for 9 years, she wouldn't let me. Melody Lay was the lead referee back in the 90s. For whatever reason, she didn't let me referee. But that encouraged me, that gave me the ganas, as I like to say, to try to get into the professional. And it's funny because I'd say 9 out of 10 referees are district attorneys, judges, fire captains. We have like 5 police officers, district attorney investigators, and me, an ex-con from the neighborhood. And, God had a plan. I made it, I got through, and the rest is history,
Yeah. Ray, when we first spoke, you talked about some difficulties around drug use at that time, and maybe even your first professional fight. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Well, it was in the amateurs. This is why I say I still had one hand in the gangs and one hand trying to keep my life right. I was married in my first marriage, and I was doing a lot of methamphetamines and cocaine. I'm a truck driver by trade, and back then, that was the drug of choice of truck drivers. It helps you work longer hours, And truck drivers it was just you go to a truck yard and you could find cocaine and methamphetamine anywhere. It was just the drug of choice. And anyways, I was trying to be a referee. It might be funny. My wife now doesn't like when I say that, but so I'm trying to be a referee in the amateurs, and she wouldn't let me be a referee in Melody Lane. So, one day I went to a show and I went to the restroom. I did a line of speed. And as I'm walking out, I bump into Melody, and she just looked at me. We had like a little 20-second stare. And I thought to myself, what's her trip, So I went back to the table, watched a few more fights, and one of the other referees comes out and he goes, Ray, you got a white line around your nose.
Oh, no.
I just sealed my fate with this woman, So it was my fault that she wouldn't let me, and maybe that was one of the reasons. But that was like 5 years into sitting on the ring, sitting ringside. So it was partly my fault, I have no one to blame for not getting that chance to referee. And but yeah, that was my drug of choice. And mind you, I'm not making excuses. I was always a working drug addict. I always worked, and but it ended my first marriage. Anyways, moving forward, I got into the pros. My wife didn't like me doing speed. She was constantly telling me, you better stop, I'm going to leave you. But again, we bought a house, had the 2 cars, we'd go on vacation once a year. You know, I personally thought, you know what, if I'm doing the right thing as a man, a married man, I should have my choice, my right to do drugs, you know. Anyways, I actually had a fight on Showtime, boxing. And Robin Williams mimicked it real good. You know, he said when he used to do cocaine, he'd be getting up in the morning, chewing gum, talking to his kids, but he had no gum in his mouth, you know. So I'm on Showtime boxing, doing a fight, and I'm chewing gum, but I have no gum. So I get home, and my wife just ripped into me. She goes, you know, you fought all these years to be a referee, and you're going to do this? The next week, she tells me, if you continue these drugs, I'm going to leave you. By this time, I had 3 sons with her. They were all little guys. And I come home Friday, and sure enough, man, she packed her stuff up and left. And this is where my testimony comes in as a Christian. I wasn't serving God at that time. It broke my heart because I love my children. I love my wife. She's a good woman. Thank God, I thank God for my wife, Arlene. She's a registered nurse at Montana Kaiser. Manager now. She's moving up in the world, but she left me. And God works in mysterious ways. Sometimes he will bring you down to your knees in troubled times and desperate times to reveal himself to you. And, and she left. I really thought she was just throwing wolf tickets all this time. And she left, took my kids. And I was sitting in my house, speeded out on meth. And finally, 1 o'clock in the morning, I just said, you know what, God? I got on my knees. The house was black, dark. I got on my knees and I told my exact prayer was, if you bring me back my kids and my wife, I give you my word, I will never touch this stuff again. Mind you, 26 years of doing methamphetamine and speed every day. Every day. I have a homeboy that was a cook. So I used to get 8 balls for $10, where some guys were paying $80, $100. I was getting them. And mind you, I got on my knees and I said, you know what, God, give me back my kids and my wife, and I will never touch this again. As God is my witness, I never touched it after that. I went cold turkey. That's 26 years of doing drugs. That's the Holy Spirit, because I know drug addicts after drug addicts after drug addicts that have fallen back and have, that they're not believers, And I went cold turkey. And God is good. She came back like 3-4 days later, and I've never touched it, never went back to it. Does it cross my mind? Yes, it has. It has crossed my mind. When you're having a bad day, what can cheer me up? A line of meth, a line of speed, a line of coke. But you know what? When I get into prayer, it goes away.
Did you say you did it every day for 26
every day,
years?
Every day. Well, it would always start as the weekends, but, hey, why not start on Wednesday, And if we had Thanksgiving, hey, it's a holiday, let's start it early, But
and now you have been how long without it?
15 years come July. July 26 is when I stopped. July 26, I was 44. I'll be 61 in July, and I haven't touched it since. That's God, man. That's God. That's the Holy Spirit.
Congratulations on that.
Yeah, congratulations, Ray. That's impressive. Well, Ray, we ask each guest to bring an item of significance with them. What did you bring with you today?
My Bible. My Bible is my rock. My Bible I lean on when in good times. I lean on it in bad times. And I encourage everybody, even if you don't come to my church, give God a chance, man. Give God a chance. Because what's happening in the world today, how do you explain it that it's word for word in your Bible? I know my Bible's a little torn up because I always got it. I keep it in my work truck. I take it out of my work truck. It's always with me. And that's my rock, And that's my encouragement to the fans out there in SGV. I wanted to mention one of the things, let me jump back again. One of the big things that I remember in San Gabriel Valley as a little boy, besides El Monte swimming pool, is Chris's Burger on Amar and Puente Avenue. Chris's Burger, mind you, I was a chubby kid, so I used to put away specials there twice a day. You know what I mean? But if you guys ever want to visit Chris's Burger on Amar and Puente Avenue, that's an awesome burger place. It's old style. They have them on pretty much, Joe's Burger, John's Burger, but this is Chris's Burgers. The burgers are just, I'm going to take my grandson right after this too.
Awesome.
But yeah, Chris's Burgers.
Well, thank you for sharing and bringing that in with you. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to get into your show and your what you have in store for that. But let's take a quick break.
Cool.
Sometimes, even the best of us can slip up. That's why the law offices of Scott Wormuth are here to pick you back up again.
And while they strive to get you the biggest compensation possible, oh my God!
Their main concern is your health and recovery. They work closely with doctors and insurance companies to make sure you get the proper medical treatment.
Initial consultations are free, so give them a call.
At the law offices of Scott Wormuth, we're with you all the way.
I'm Scott Wormuth. We've been fighting for your rights for more than 40 years.
All right, we're back with Ray. Ray, before the break, you were sharing about your Bible and its meaning, and Chris's Burger.
Chris's Burger.
When we come back from the break, we like to ask questions from this box of cards called Icebreaker. They're just a way for the audience to get to know all of us a little bit more, and you can choose to answer it or not. So I had a couple out here, and I was trying to see who you are and what direction to go with it. So I think I'm going to go with this one. What is a mistake people often make about you?
That I'm just a dumb gang member. Just a dumb gang member. I'm not educated. I'm sorry that I didn't get educated, but I'm sincere and I'm respectful and I'm a good man. I'm a good man. I try to be a good man every day.
Awesome. I think people think by the way I look and walk that I'm a mean or a scary person. Oftentimes when I speak, they'll say, "Oh, I didn't expect your voice to be like that," or "I didn't expect you to sound like that." And then they would just share with me that observing me from a distance, they thought I was mean or scary. Yeah, that's been a consistent thing in my life.
Well, in my opinion, because where we grew up, we tend to judge a book by its cover. Let's be honest. And you do look like a tough guy. When I first seen you, you look like a tough guy.
And now?
No, you still do.
Does he sound like a tough guy?
Well, not all tough guys are, F this, F that, especially in his era. It's more the way you carry yourself.
So you wouldn't mess with him, huh?
Only if I had to. Only if I had to.
And Scott?
Maybe kind of similar to what you say. Some people say I'm big. I don't think of myself as big, and I don't think of myself as mean. But maybe they have that same impression.
Sure. Yeah. Well, if you're listening to this or watching on YouTube, what is a mistake people often make about you? Let us know in the comments, and we'll be sure to read that in a future episode. So, Ray, you've been refereeing boxing and MMA for a while, and now you've sort of turned that into your own podcast.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, and 2023, prior to that, 6 months prior to that, in 2022, I was thinking, why don't we, when people criticize referees, or why did they do that, or they criticize a judge or an MMA referee, where's our voice? Where can we get on and explain our side of it? Because you got a lot of fans out there that don't know anything about rules, but they are just totally criticizing you. The same with basketball, football, baseball. They just criticize, but they don't know the rules. And we can't make up our rules. So somebody said, why don't you start a podcast? And you know what? It was like a bing. And that's exactly what I did. I started a podcast. But from there, I really want to go out and just, like yours, positive testimonies. I want to just put out their positive testimony. But the ground of it is a Christian podcast. But I want to interview referees and tell us our side, our defense, our excuses, our fears, our wants, what brought them to be a referee, and same with the judges. They're always criticizing judges, and that should have been a 10-10 round. That's not a rule. That's one of the biggest things. That should have been a 10-10 round. You really think these fighters, MMA and boxers, train that hard to just have a draw? Give somebody a win. And the rule is it's a 10-9 must system. So you as a fan or even some of the commentators really drive me bananas. They will educate the fans. That was a 10-10 round. I don't know what that judge was thinking. That judge should never work again. That is not a rule. Whether we agree with that rule or not, That is not a rule, and we have to go by the rules. It's just like, well, I just, what do you tell a cop when you do a roll-on stop? Oh, I just rolled on. You just admitted guilt. Or you go in front of the judge and say, I was only going 2 miles faster than the speed limit. You just admitted guilt.
How much can you say on your podcast? Because I would think, for instance, the major sports leagues, they don't want their referees or umpires talking. They keep them.
Excuse me. It's funny you say that, because I'm held accountable because I'm a referee. I'm held accountable to California. Everybody I interview, I have to go through Andy Foster, the executive officer. I cannot interview active fighters in case I get their fights. I can't if I referee their fights, there might be a controversial call, and somebody will say, "Oh, well, he was on his podcast, that's why he did his side." So nobody that is active I could interview. I can only interview retired fighters. But with that said, I'm held accountable. I can't touch certain politics. So I'm held under a tighter umbrella than I would think you. You pretty much could talk about anything,
right? Whether
you get backlash or not. But I can't talk about certain things.
Yeah, you're a licensee.
Yes,
and
yes.
You do have to follow.
Like as Andy Foster said, don't bring shame on California, Ray.
Yeah. So are you the only referee that you know of who?
Yes, that I know of.
Who has a podcast?
Yes.
How many referees do you think there are in this state?
In this state, God, I would guess maybe 40 boxing and about 25 MMA. There's only a few of us that do both. So, yeah.
Well, and so that's much smaller than I would have imagined.
Yeah, it's not many at all.
But in the world, there's many, and that's what I'm trying to do is interview the top referees in the world.
Who was that famous? Is it Mills?
Mills Lane?
Yeah.
Yes, I met him. He passed away already.
Yeah.
He was a judge. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. He was a judge
by trade, yeah.
Yeah.
I actually met him in Youth Authority.
Oh, did you?
He came to talk to us.
Oh.
And he was a cool cat.
I refereed basketball for 9 years in the San Gabriel Valley.
So
Well, I want to get your take on it. So having played basketball, the best referees to me were calm. They knew how to communicate. They could, keep a level head. They would say, hey, I missed that one. I'll get the next one. I just couldn't be mad at them. And that was the real skill that it took to be a good ref. Like, 'cause you're not going to see it all, right? And so the older ones that I thought that were really great communicators.
Yes.
What does it take to be a good boxing or MMA referee?
The same. You don't get involved. The fight's not about the referee. The fight's about the fighter. The main concern is keep them safe and get the rules. Don't let them break rules. But at the same time, you got to do what's right for the sport. If this wasn't in basketball, I never refereed basketball, but if it wasn't so much a flagrant intentional foul, if it could be, I'm not going to call that. But if it was flagrant, then you need to call it. Whether you like that kid, don't like that kid, you don't like that school, don't like that school or that professional team, or what I mean? You gotta be fair. What amazes me is nowadays with all the cameras, all the recordings, as a professional referee, when somebody, so far, thank you Jesus, nobody's called me corrupt. But when somebody says, "Oh, that referee or that judge is corrupt," he got bought with all the cameras and stuff. With the great career that I've been all over the world, who would be that stupid to throw away a career for one fight? Nobody's ever offered me to swing, to stop a fight early. Nobody. And again, with all the recording stuff, I don't know who would do that. Mm-hmm. Could it happen? I'm sure it would. And it's not a secret. In the 40s and the 50s, the mob wasn't. Jake LaMotta admitted that the mob told him to throw a fight. Okay, that was then. But now, again, with all the recordings, with all the cameras, I mean, everybody can record you doing anything. You'd be stupid to throw away your career.
Do you get graded?
Yes. We get evaluated, and you could be the top. You're only remembered, Jack Reese, our trainer, Tom Taylor, our trainer, says you're only remembered for your last fight. So if I go in, drop the ball, call the fight too early, say that was a low blow and it wasn't a low blow. Like Andy Foster, the executive officer, says, you're going to sit down for a little while and think about that. You know what I mean? So yeah. His main thing is do not bring shame on California. And your bit, when you said about some don't want to talk about it, Andy Foster says, no, if we do a screw up in California, we will speak on it. We're not going to do that to the fans or anybody that wants to criticize. We will speak on it. But yet other states won't speak on their mess ups. And I personally think that's the worst thing you could do, because it just keeps the fire going, on that. Oh, well, you guys did that. You stopped the fight too early. Why is that referee still working? Why is that judge still working? But when you address it, in my opinion, it's done. Let's move on to the next one, because somebody will mess up.
Do you remember the NBA referee that came out and wrote a book? What's his name? Is it Donahue or Donahue?
Yeah, I don't remember the name.
I remember it, yeah.
He was just dropping dimes on everybody. So like the league, like calling down, and Dick Bavetta was like one of the,
Was he one of the persons he accused?
Yeah. Well, I think the players too were like, he would show up at the game and, maybe it's game 6 of the finals and they already know which way this game is going.
Yeah.
But, well, Ray, we're going to move on to the final segment of the show where we get to learn a little bit more about you and what you like in the San Gabriel Valley. So, Ray, this is called the SGV3, and we ask you to share your 3 favorite or most memorable places or experiences in the San Gabriel Valley. So, what would be number 1?
Chris's Burger. Chris's Burger. How do they say the best way to a man is his stomach, and Chris's Burger was just, and then we have another one in Bassett, Taco Nazo, right there on Valley in the 605 and the 10 freeway. Taco Nazo. Jesse's a big boxing fan. He was rated number 1 in Southern California, best fish tacos. Taco Nazo,
Okay.
Those are the two places.
And what about a third?
The South El Monte Boxing Gym.
Okay.
I had a lot of good memories there. Ben Lira, 83-year-old trainer. Just a lot of great memories there, Wanting to be a tough kid as a kid, I had tough moments there, And I had sad moments as well, but feel real good when I'm around Ben Lira, South El Monte Boxing Gym.
Are there many boxing gyms in the area?
Oh, Southern California's, we got the mega boxing gym.
Oh, we had a boxer on the show before.
Oh, yeah, Joe Hanks. But he's from Jersey, I think.
Yeah.
He owns Brick City Boxing in Pasadena, but he was a heavyweight fighter.
I mean, if you ever want to get a boxer, please, man. Southern California's full of them, as far as San Gabriel Valley, you got Jojo Diaz from El Monte. You got Arnold Barboza right now that's at the top of his game.
He's from
El Monte. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you should interview him and Jojo Diaz. There's, God, many boxers,
Do you know them personally?
Very, very well.
Oh, well, send them our way.
I will.
Because you can't have them on your show yet, right?
I can't have them on mine yet. But yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
He just lives up the street, Arnold. He's fighting for a world title next week.
Really?
Next week, world title.
Oh, well, maybe after that, after he recovers, and that'll be a good time to reach out.
Yes.
Well, Ray, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
If people want to get in touch with you, or what's the best way, or check out your podcast, what's the best way to do that?
Yes, please go on YouTube, guys. If you want to check out a sports podcast, go on Ref Popeye Ray on YouTube and subscribe, please. And my Instagram is Popeye Ray, and follow me. Here's some good stories.
Awesome. Well, Ray, thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you.
We do appreciate it. Well, there you go. Another episode in the books. I hope you enjoyed that. I know that I did. It was interesting to see the San Gabriel Valley from someone else's perspective. And, one of the things, Ray, that's going to stick out is your nicknames that someone gave you as a boxer.
Piñata. Yeah.
I think it's funny, but it also shows, a great deal of humility and your ability to be humble. So I thank you for coming on and sharing that with us. Definitely go check out his podcast, Third Man in the Ring. If you're interested in checking out more of our episodes, go to our website, mysgv.net. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And until next week, we'll see you then.
Thank you for joining us on the My SGV podcast. Check out more of our content on our website, mysgv.net. This show was produced by Russell Mono and edited by Victoria Allers of Kind Monster Productions. If you'd like to join us next week as we capture and share more stories from our diverse community, feel welcome.
Nice matter. No, kind of matter.